Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. On Wednesday morning, Ukrainian President Zelensky refused to renew a gas transit contract with Russian giant Gazprom. As a consequence, Russian gas deliveries to Europe via Ukraine have ceased. What are the implications of this halt? Does this indicate the end of Russian dominance on the European energy market? Well, to discuss these and related questions, I am joined by Iuliia Osmolovska, Director, GLOBSEC, Kyiv. Welcome to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Okay, so how did President Zelensky's decision not to renew the contract, how was that received within Ukraine? Was there general agreement that this was the right thing to do?
Well, definitely it has been a general agreement and delight to see the end of this gas transit saga through Ukraine. Especially it was awkward to see that been happening when the full-scale invasion from Russia into Ukraine has happened in February 2022. So definitely it has been met with delight.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear. But, you know, Ukraine does suffer some financial loss in terms of transit fees, which it was receiving while gas was still running through the pipeline. How much of an impact is that going to have on Ukraine's resources to defend itself from Russia's invasion?
Basically, the rough estimates of Ukraine's annual earnings from this gas transit was about 800 million of US dollars. And most major part of that had been actually going to support and to service the gas transporting system, like 600 millions. And only 200 had been going to the state budget as in revenue. So basically, the government has decided to raise the quotas and the tariffs for the industrial enterprises for the gas transit. So basically, these internal prices will be going up. Partially, this might compensate these losses, but there are also so many other ways of actually getting revenues to the budget. The most important was that by actually terminating this contract, we effectively stopped Russia filling in their budget with the revenues, which had been amounted to roughly $7 billion annually to support their war campaign in Ukraine.
Okay, now clearly this has had a huge political impact as well in terms of Russia's leverage over the provision of gas to the European Union. But there are some EU countries which have not taken too kindly to it. And Slovakia and Hungary come to mind, of course. And Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, is threatening to cut off electricity supplies to Ukraine. How is that being perceived?
Well, let me start with putting a bit broader picture. Ukraine has been very transparent about these intentions to terminate the contract, and it has warned the European partners that it's going to do this already back in December 2023. So there had been enough time to prepare for the European Union, European countries to prepare themselves for alternatives where to get the gas supplies. And basically, the general amount of Russian gas getting to Europe has been decreased and amounted for just 8% of all the gas supplies to Europe, import of gas to Europe in 2024. So basically, these two countries also had options, and the European Commission had offered these options, like, for instance, using the capacities of Germany and Italy and storage gas that are actually being in European storages. But it was up to these two leaders to consider whether they would be willing to continue opting for cheaper Russian gas, but actually sacrificing the strategic issues of European security, energy security, versus dependency on Russia, or to go ahead with what they do.
Right. Well, of course, you lay it out perfectly. But here's the thing: Slovakia and Hungary, the leaders of both of those countries, have been in touch with President Putin. In fact, Robert Fico went to visit him quite recently. What do you think is the dynamic there? What is Putin trying to do? Is he trying to cause some kind of turbulence within the European Union? And what do you think the outcome's going to be of that?
Yes, definitely. There is divide and rule play by Russia, especially using this leverage of export of their energy sources to the European countries. Let me mention that apart from gas, we're also talking about the oil supplies that has not been stopped for the time being. And definitely Putin tried to make the split wider among the consolidated position, and the unity of the European member states. And he's playing relatively effectively with Slovakia and Hungary. I'm saying relatively because for Slovakia, as I mentioned, there is still an option to consider different other means. And for Hungary, for instance, they decided to use the gas pipelines they're going from Turkey to support their needs in energy resources. So basically, yes, these two countries are currently, I think it's more the problem inside the EU for the European institutions and for the European member states, because this is a signal of disrupted unity rather than particular pragmatic cases of Ukraine versus Slovakia in particular commercial deals.
Well, clearly this is a division that is going to be leveraged by Putin wherever possible. But in terms of, for example, Ukraine's accession to the European Union, there is a risk that this division is going to cause delays to that process when it does eventually get going. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would agree, but let me remind you that the association agreement has already been signed and ratified, so it's already been in place. So what we might assume that there might be some kind of, again, internal disputes, and actually the position of Slovakia and Hungary had been criticized much, both by the leaders of the European Union and the particular member states for this disruptive position that they've took. So I think that, again, when it comes to the association agreement, we're currently in technical stage of going chapter by chapter with the European Commission with all the screening of the chapters. So I think that at this stage, it won't disrupt very much the general dynamic of European integration. But for some political issues, yes, there might be some challenges and disruptions.
In general terms, how would you evaluate the relationship now between Ukraine and the European Union in terms of the kind of support that the European Union is providing Ukraine in this war of aggression by Russia?
I actually see this as a very positive because, first of all, we have the commitment of the European leaders of the European Union and the leading member states to support Ukraine and to stand with Ukraine as long as it takes, as long as it needs. And right now, it's also a sort of a transitional stage in when it comes to the geostrategy of the European Union in their transatlantic dimension. So as far as I understand right now, there are some different strategies being considered, or also, for instance, how much European Union should invest and help with macro-financial assistance or with kind of like less military assistance compared to the United States and vice versa. So all these issues will be defined, I think, after the formal inauguration and the new president of United States come into power, but also with some of the political events that we facing in Europe. I mean, right now, the elections in Germany, for instance.
Well, certainly. Now, you mentioned transatlantic relations and President-elect Trump. What is the expectation of what Trump is going to do, say, when he does get signed in? I mean, he has said that there's only one option, and that is peace in this war. What is the expectation of his plans?
Well, at least the positive sign is that he has a plan. He has a vision which he's going to apply and to see whether it's working or not. Because Trump himself said already that the issue of achieving peace in Ukraine in 24 hours is getting more and more complicated than he originally thought. So he's revising his strategy at the moment. What we see on tactical level, this is very intense contacts happening, and we anticipate the visit of the special envoy Trump General Kellogg to Ukraine and to a number of European capitals for the fact-finding mission before they're going to frame the issue. But then again, everything depends not just on the United States, but on all of the actors involved, Russia and Ukraine in first place, and European capitals in second. And our president also praising and welcoming the intentions of Donald Trump to look into the issue as one of his foreign policy priorities. Also is saying that Ukraine would be willing to consider the ceasefire when we get sustainable security guarantees and enough weapons to be able to deter Russia for any future attacks.
You mentioned sustainable security guarantees. What does that look like to you?
Well, this is probably the biggest puzzle at the moment for all of the actors involved, because I've been participating in different discussions and brainstormings, and different formats comes up with complete different views. And sometimes, for instance, these viable security guarantees contain a clause of having European troops stationed in Ukraine as stabilization forces or peacekeeping missions and whatever. And some of the leaders of the countries actually denying this perspective. This is one case. Another one, to equip Ukraine with long-range missiles and with proper and solid air defense systems and so on. So there are many different elements of these viable security guarantees at stake. And I do know that the government of Ukraine has their own plan and vision, which is going to discuss and is already been discussing intensively, both in European capitals and in transatlantic.
Well, certainly we look forward to hearing and seeing what President Trump proposes and what the parties come up with in terms of something that is acceptable to Ukraine. Yes, we look forward to having you back on our program soon. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with our audience. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. And that's all from us here on World Talks. Goodbye.